All right, I'm going to close WhatsApp.
You should, because we're live after many, I don't know how many
That took a while.
hours.
Well, we
It did
started
take a
chatting
while.
and then figured, what are we actually doing?
Well, what we're doing is talking about your reading.
Yes. Well, let's talk about your reading as well, not just mine. I hope but you've read the book I just finished, so that's a good thing.
That's
So,
true. And I'm
all
a
right, so
teacher.
we're starting the conversation on, and you teach, or you on Free to Learn by Dr. Peter Gray, or the PhD Peter Gray from, I tore it. I was very upset about that. Research professor in the Department of Psychology at Boston College, but I think he's retired from that now. He has a popular book called Psychology that is still taught in many first year or introduction to psychology at colleges around the country, around the States.
Really? Is that the
Yeah,
same guy?
yeah.
Wow. No, because I think that was
And he
my one of
writes a
the
popular segment in the Psychology Today set of
he
blogs
does.
about play and developmental psychology. And there's a lot of the writings from that blog that were made into this book. And I remember there were whole sections about what is play that I'd read from his blog in the past that I have saved articles and stuff. And it's a
I
fantastic book. You're right. It's really, really, really good.
I think that Gray, the psychology book, was one of the textbooks that we had to use at uni.
Okay, so not just in the States, in the UK and
I think it is, yeah.
perhaps other speaking countries. I expect not France because they're like, no, we will never use a British reference or English or Anglo-Saxon.
Yeah, of course not.
And it's not Freud, so we're not teaching it. I don't know. There's a lot of that in the French side, I
So when you
think.
read it, what struck you? What
Okay,
was the
so I just finished it last week, I think. Yeah, I think it's about right. Um, I so let's see, what the week before. I really liked everything in it. I want to paraphrase the book, or should I paraphrase the book just in like the
it's a
big.
long time since I read it, but I was
Okay, so in
basically
short, the sorry, go ahead. What
and
was your
I
take on it?
became like, what am I doing as a teacher?
Sure, yeah, I would
I
totally
read that
understand.
book and thought, oh dear.
I ended it and thought I want to create a new school. And
I had that
I
thought too.
wondered if what book Graham read. Oh, sorry, I should not say names. Graham is a pseudonym. One of our common friends. Sorry, I forget that we're live. It's okay. Just a first name, I guess, and nobody watches this. Should be fine. No, I don't
It
know.
should be fine.
Um, the Anyway, it's a friend who wanted to create a school at some point, and or maybe no. And I don't know what book he read to want to do that, because I know that he's read a bunch of books about education as another teacher and an interest in education, I think. Anyhow, Free to Learn is talking about, he starts out with how all the research, and there's really a lot of very detailed bibliography and research from anthropology, from psychology, and it's really well put together, vulgarized. I mean, as in like accessible to just about anybody, and it's well written. I find anyway, and
And
he
that's high
talks
praise
about.
from you. That is high praise from you because some of the books you've read recently, except maybe BS Jobs, where you've been very like,
Oh, that one was
eh,
a high praise.
eh, because you were like the couldn't see the references and blah blah blah. But Bullshit Jobs and this are two books where you said you felt it was well referenced, well put together, and accessible, and made some really good points. And
I think, right. I mean,
yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I agree. I agree.
Um,
So
so he starts
accessible
out
research.
by talking about how the levels of depression, the levels of anxiety
Mm,
in schools, young people all around, and
mhm.
many countries show this, that ever since the 1950s all the way to today, there's much higher levels of anxiety, much higher levels of diagnosed attention deficit disorder and similar disorders, higher levels of depression, much higher levels of, I can't remember what else, like a lot of pretty bleak picture
Mm.
of young people today. And then he talks about education within, and his basic premise for the book is that school is in the way of education, which didn't surprise me at all.
Mhm.
That what is in the way of education, aside from like our whole culture, which has shifted in many different directions, And one of the directions it shifted in since the 19th century and since the beginning of the organized school as it is to deprive children from freedom in their development and in their growth and in their education. And that to be able to have freedom, you need also play.
Yep.
And that's also a basic premise of many definitions of play, is that you need freedom to be able to play. And that's been another thing, generally speaking, since the Industrial Revolution, to eliminate the idea, or even since before the Industrial Revolution. And he references Max Weber, who's
Oh, he does. Oh, wow.
Yeah, he does.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he does. And this is a book. I honestly need to finish that book. I read half of it. Max Weber's book, who is a sociologist from the 19th or early 20th century. 20th century for sure. I can't remember when he was writing exactly, maybe 19th. Anyway, who wrote a pretty seminal book on comparing Protestant cultures from more Northern Europe to more Catholic cultures from Southern Europe, and how most of the Protestant cultures have moved into being capitalist. Like the spirit of the book is called Protestant. I can't remember. I can't say it. Protestant and the Spirit of Capitalism. I think this is part of the title. I can't remember the full title right now. But basically, he says that they making work into a virtue, which is the Protestants made work into a virtue much more than did the Catholics.
Yeah.
And that turned into the roots of capitalism and work and productivity and all of that. And whereas the Catholics were a lot more in, I'm badly giving it a bad, don't quote me on that one, but just basically hang out. And that was a lot more, the Catholics had a lot more emphasis on the suffering of Jesus and how basically you should remain poor and dedicate your life to your children and your family and make more kids. And I'm vastly exaggerating. It's not like that at all, because I was remembering the trait about Protestantism. And he talks about that in Free to Learn, because we've created most of our, regardless of the Catholic origin argued by Max Weber, now we're clearly in a capitalistic society where the work is a lot more valued than play. But he says play is necessary to learn, and freedom is necessary, and freedom is a necessary condition to play. And then there's a large part of it. So he defines play, and he defines it in very almost similar ways to the two philosophers and sociologists that I've read, and they're the main references in defining play. I also like that most people defining play, it's something that's very elusive and very difficult to define.
It is,
which is also part of the idea that it's part of us and part of nature. It's inherent. It's not something that happens. Whereas work is not inherent. It's something that we created culturally.
Yeah.
He spends some time talking about the traditions of hunter-gatherer cultures.
He does. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And how, and on some of the things that he shows in particular that children are not specifically taught. They just learn. They're just left to their own devices and to play all day. They're in mixed age groups. Because by necessity, the band of hunter-gatherers was relatively small. So you didn't necessarily have only people your age. And at school, you're segregated by people your age.
True. Yeah.
So he talks about all the advantages of actually having mixed groups of mixed age groups. And the hunter-gatherer stuff, I was wondering, like, where are you going with this? Because it's very interesting, but we're clearly no longer in a hunter-gatherer culture. So what am I supposed to do with this information? I'm not sure. Now, of course, and he goes, well, you might, at the end, you might wonder what this has to do with the modern whatever life, and let me explain it to you. And then there's a large part about what is now, I believe, what seems to be the main model for free or what's called democratic schools, which is the Sudbury Valley School in Massachusetts in the US, because it started in 1969. So it's the one that has the longest standing full set of, I believe so, full set of examples. And now I looked up the Sudbury Valley School, and he went there, he talks about it. And in short, it's a school that was created by I can't remember now, was it a guy that was studying, and basically he was studying, and he was a professor at university, and he was studying education, I think. And he came to the conclusion that the main problem for education was schools.
I can't remember it. I can't remember it. There's a point I do want to pick up on quickly, which is
Mhm.
the hunter gatherers.
Yeah.
One of the things that stuck with me is when the kid played, they played what the adults did. So
Yeah.
they played hunting games. They played
Yeah.
the looking for food games. They played the things that they saw that the adults were doing, which and of course play being constantly changing and adapting. You have to constantly change and adapt, which means you
Mhm.
learn, which means by the time they were adults, they learned a lot of the stuff that the adults were doing
That they
from
needed to
playing,
survive.
that they needed to survive from playing and
Yeah.
copying each other. And like that's what's so cool about play. And I do look to you as one of the people I know who about play,
Yeah.
not because you're so into the whole thing. And it's I think
My days at Disneyland kind of show the,
well, yeah, we're going to
that's a
get into
different,
that,
we'll
but play.
circle back to that.
But the thing for me as a teacher
Mhm.
is how, and when I speak to you, I get reminded about play is this iterative, reflective, constantly adaptive process that
Yeah.
changes in the moment, that which makes it means it develops resilience because you're constantly having to adapt to some like weird thing that's changed
Yeah.
or whatever. And that at school doesn't exist. It
No, in
does
school,
not
so
exist.
the main premise he starts with, which I was like, yeah, of course, duh, even though he takes gloves before saying this, that school is his prison. It's designed as a prison. And I remember from
Yeah,
reading Michel Foucault's Surveiller et Punir, which is
punishment and
surveillance and
yeah,
punishment. I can't remember what the exact title and translated title is, but it's basically amounts to that, which is about the history of the prison, talks about school,
yeah,
because schools and the development of prison went hand in hand as
yep,
buildings and setups and everything
yep,
else that was just
yep,
designed at the same time of
yep,
the modern prison. Um, and the talk was, rather than raising kids as productive participants or future productive participants of society as the hunter-gatherer cultures apparently did it, increasingly the child is somebody who has no idea what's going on, so needs to be told. And then increasingly the school system became about which is what it is now, which is about cramming as much information as possible to be able to succeed at a test that has nothing to do with learning anything.
mm,
Most of it is forgotten.
mhm,
And even though the more it goes, the more weight, the more importance there is in the culture for which school you went to, for the grades, for the
mm,
quality of it, for
mm,
the parents,
mm.
which went also hand in hand with a more control and surveillance from the parents over the children. That goes in hand with there's more danger, the kids can't be let outside, which has also changed a lot in the past, even since I was a kid,
Well,
and which
that's
he
what I was
talks
about to
about as a
say.
kid, he's probably a bit older than us, but not much older. I know he's older than
No,
us,
he's a
but
lot older than us.
he's a lot
But
older than us.
what's
So he had
scary?
way more freedom than I did, and I
Yeah,
had way more freedom than my nieces have,
yeah, yeah.
or
That's what's scary
children.
for
Like,
me. Because when I talk to the kids I teach about what I used to do, like on in the summer, I was out with three friends who were local. We'd be out all day on our
yeah,
bikes and
yeah,
we do stupid stuff.
yeah,
Like, so, okay, so my mum would talk about in Kenya with her sisters nicking mangoes from someone's tree,
yeah.
right? And what we would do is we'd nick apples from someone's tree. We'd jump into their garden, nick an apple, and then run. And we'd like see how fast we could get in,
Yeah,
climbing
and
over
I just heard
fences,
from
doing
a
that.
friend of a friend that their child, small age, is not allowed to go outside in their garden, in their walled garden by himself.
What does that? Oh man, we're seeing what that does. We are seeing what that does. I was out for hours. My parents didn't care. They were like, "You, yeah, do well." They cared, but like, you know, go do what you want.
So, and of course the prevalence of media scaring the parents,
Yeah,
and of course he talks about the fact that it's not. And I don't have kids, by the way,
yeah,
but
neither do
still, I
I.
believe
We've got
strongly
nieces and nephews.
in what he has to say about the importance of autonomy, freedom, and play.
Yes, yes,
And school is not designed to have any of those things. It's only been designed, and we talk about this when we talked about bullshit jobs. Schools also, on the other hand, have more and more oversight, more and more admin, more and more teachers needing to
very true.
show to the
Yes.
parents. They've done the best. They've done the right things with the right rules. And all of those things, every one of them is removing one opportunity for play and freedom from the
Yep.
kids.
Yep.
And the kids don't want to be there.
No.
And freedom and play is freedom first. So as in, if you don't want to play, and if you have to go there and study things that you don't want to study in a way that is not making you retain any information, because the goal is to score at the tests, not to know anything, not to practice anything. Now, I'm exaggerating widely, and he also says so in the book, that of course some teachers, and even maybe many teachers, are trying to stretch and give a tiny bit of play and freedom or some sort. But the general gist of the whole culture is going towards, parents being, it's irresponsible of a parent to give autonomy for a child. It would be irresponsible of a parent to give them anything else than, trying to get them the best grades possible, to be able to have the best track possible, to be able to have the best college possible. And they're so busy. Kids are so busy. And when I was in Singapore, Asia is particularly, and everybody's becoming like that everywhere around the world. Kids don't have a single hour for themselves. They're busy from morning to night.
Yep. And in schools, it's the same. But even with
that's
teachers,
what I mean.
And I felt that as a teacher, I was like, I had to take quite a few medical calls over the past couple of years, and there was nowhere that I could go to take a call by myself. Nowhere. There was and not only that, the signal was terrible. There were two places where I can go if I want peace and quiet. One is my car, and the other is the toilet. Nowhere else. Every other room, there's a teacher, or I'm dealing with a pupil, or another teacher, or something. Like there's an Instagram account called Teacher Misery, which is, you want an insight into like how terrible teaching can be, like go to that account.
Yeah.
And it's and
I've just started
extreme,
to have a glimpse from teaching and how much it demands. And now I hate the people in France and anywhere else who are like saying that teachers are lazy and they have so many holidays, and you should take that one. It's an easy job. You have all the holidays. And I'm like, no, you don't. maybe if you're in primary school and you're not really caring for it, maybe like you're teaching primary school, that the program doesn't really change much. And when you're not dealing with the kids, you don't have to grade that many things. But even then that's changing because there's more grading.
Well, hopefully a load of people watch this video and then you'll get jumped on for saying that. That's what I would like to happen.
What do you mean?
But I mean, a bunch of primary school teachers go, no, you don't know.
It's entirely possible that I don't know. I mean, I know that. So by the way, which is like the counterpoint to what I just said, my cousin teaches primary school and he was extremely stressed out because he never taught that class in the first year of primary school. And he takes his job very seriously. So he took a lot of time to study and to prepare. And that was during the holidays in August. Now, so he did go on holidays for a few weeks, but he was, so he's not. But the other thing is, people think that you have your holidays during the school holidays, but there's at least half of that that's taken by work.
Yep.
I know. I mean, you were working during the holidays, generally speaking. And then during the week of your work week, for most teachers, I believe, you don't have any other time to like grade copies or prepare for classrooms than in the evenings and on the weekends.
Yeah.
I think.
Well,
mostly it depends. I'm sure there's outliers on either side of like times that people have special schedules or time blocks in the middle of the day or things like that. But overall, I'm pretty certain, and I know from you saying that you're marking and grading, and even just from my little experience teaching, that is not full time, I have to grade on the evenings and the weekends.
It's teaching.
Which is work, by the way, just in case anybody who's not figured that out.
Teach like marking.
In my opinion, the worst part of the work.
Yeah, it is. But there's teachers in this whole system and marking and all of that, because there's a few things that I've seen after reading that book. Like I was head of sixth form at my school like it's like 4 or 5 years ago now. I don't know how long ago it was, but 10% of my year group that I was accountable for were on some kind of anti-anxiety or anti-depression.
He talks about medication. Those numbers at the beginning. It's also terrifying how many kids are under medication.
It's going to get
and medication from
worse.
Even like 2-3 years old to get them to stay still.
Yeah,
it's not normal now for most people for a kid to run around.
But this is the thing. What do 4-year-olds do? They want to run around and play and try and
And a lot
play,
of urban and
break stuff.
suburban environment are not, they don't have any space to do that.
Well,
There's no
not only
space
that,
either. There's no time, there's no space, there's no,
we
and no
take them.
acceptance for it.
Yeah, exactly. Because what we take a 4-year-old who's meant like naturally to do all that, and we put them at school in an environment where they're meant to sit still and listen. I mean, good luck. But the other point I want to make is two of our mutual friends, like one of whom is a teacher, has chosen to not send his daughter to school. And the other friend, mutual friend, who I actually saw them both on Friday night.
Oh, cool.
His kids never went to school. And one of them's 18 now. And like he did everything he wanted. And I've explained this to teacher colleagues. What did he do? Nothing. He just did what he wanted. What do you mean? He just played and did what he wanted. But then how did he study? He studied when he wanted. If he wanted to tutor, he got a tutor. That was it. But yeah, so he worked really hard for a couple of months and got 5 GCSEs. He only needed 5 because that's what he needed to do to get to college. He didn't need to do any more than that. And conventionally in the UK, everyone's made to do at least 8, if not 10. And he worked really hard for like 2 or 3 months before the exams and got the grades he needed to go to get into college and got like one of the top grades in maths. And now he's doing he's doing A-levels and he's doing economics. And he keeps asking awkward questions of the teacher, but never went to school.
Yeah, so that's exactly also what is proven or shown in the Sudbury Valley School. And and when I told my cousin about this, his first reaction, I was glad that the book is translated in French. So I want to gift it to a bunch of people. I want everybody to read this thing.
Yeah, it's good.
But what you just said about the friend in common is exactly also what is shown from the results of the Sudbury Valley School, that all 80% of the children, for anybody, for you, I know you, so I know about our friends in common, and I understood but had doubts about some of the stuff, or didn't know. So this taught me about a lot of stuff and massively convinced me of now I kind of had it in the back of my mind that I agreed, but I just didn't know. And now I have a lot more interest in it about, and not just homeschooling, because I really like the model of the Sudbury Valley School, as in, so what, yeah. But just for the sake of anybody listening, the model, you can go check out the Sudbury Valley School, but they have all the information on the website. They publish books that I want to read now. The model is basically they take kids from like 4 or 5 as long as they're independent and they're ready to accept that they're going to be participating and responsible for their participation in the democratic system of the school that has councils and people speaking and saying, what are the rules, and from 1819 to all the way to from 4 to 1819, and there's I think like 400 kids in this thing. They started at 200 and now they're near 400.
You said you were going to gift the book. You're glad it's translated French.
Free to learn.
But you said you were going to gift it to who?
I don't know. I do
Everyone.
know. I'd like everybody to read it. There's a few people I'm thinking of in particular, but I didn't want to name names.
Oh, fine, right, okay, yeah. It's.
But just to finish on the school, there's no requirement to do anything. There's a few adults around that serve as like to create the environment and to be there if the kids need anything. Every one of the adults is re-elected to be on a 1-year contract, just revolving. They make up the rules for the school, and then there's a judicial committee if a child says like somebody's broken the rules. In short, that's what I understood. It might be a little bit more complex than that and what the rules of the school are. There are some aspects that you need to get a approval, like some kind of training approval. So to use the kitchen equipment, there's a kitchen. To use the computer equipment, you need to just do some training to say like you have been validated to pass and you're responsible enough that you can use this equipment. But it's not an age thing. It's I don't know what
competency thing.
Now the use of some things is supervised.
There's another distinction that I do want to also bring in, which is that people think that school, then take your child out of school and home educate. Home education is not what he's talking about in the book. It's not taking school and then having a home where the kids
some
are
people
taught
do
at
that.
home.
He does talk about the fact that some parents definitely do that, or even some parents will take them out of the school because they think the school is too lax or not strong enough
Yes.
or not supervised
Yes.
enough or not
Yes.
religious enough or
Yes.
not
Yes.
good enough in math, and they will, I'll do a better job at a parent.
And
So
that's
that's kind of a
not
little bit scary, but yeah,
that's not what
to
we're
me.
talking about. We're not talking about taking the experience of school and having it at home. We're talking about something different. And that's why you've got home education, and unschooling.
Yes, unschooling is more what we're talking about.
Unschooling is what we're talking about. Unschooling is where free to learn.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. And I also, and this is one big thing, it's very interesting. The regardless, it's shocking to most people because the culture is going strongly in the direction of more supervision, more grades, more, this is the right way to do things.
Yeah.
Now, 80% of the kids that go to this school go to college, just for the 20 other percent, just like any school, they decide that they're going to do things that they don't need college. And just like you explained very well, most of the kids realize that you don't, given everything is based on tests, you don't need a whole curriculum like the 6, 7, 10 years of studying to be able to do the end of high school graduation. You only need 2 or 3 months to study for the exam. Because that's what everybody does anyway.
True.
How much of you remember a few random things, but also that's not how the human brain functions and not how we learn, to just listen. We're not an empty vase that just gets filled up by what was heard. We have to practice and learn, and we have our own interests and developing in different ways.
What I find really interesting,
I want to say a few more things after that.
Yeah. What I find really interesting is when I speak to teachers about this kind of stuff and about like what schools are, and I make jokes about how schools are prisons and all of that kind of stuff, satirizing the whole thing, they come back with, no, but children need structure. No, but they need,
like my cousin said. My cousin was like, but they kind of need the structure. And how would you get the program done or the curriculum?
Yeah,
the syllabus.
It's still within. We're so like.
But I'm like, no, there's no syllabus. It's not necessary.
Yeah,
but that's like so outrageous to people.
It is so outrageous. Yeah, you said it really well there. It's so outrageous that you can't even question. You can't even like. People just look at me.
Sounds interesting, but why? How did you get the syllabus done? I'm like, no, there's no syllabus. He's like, what? That's not. I don't understand.
How do they learn?
Like,
how do they know how to use it? Because they want to.
You don't need. They don't need to. So some of the anecdotes. So a few things. So there's interesting on the unschooling and home education side of things. I did like that he there's only just one small mention towards the end of the book about it's an interesting movement, and it does also require one or both of the parents to take a lot of the time with the child. So it's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Not to be underestimated on,
and then of course,
and to be able to have to carve that time, I think is then we go back into socioeconomic class.
We do, yes, exactly what I was going to say.
Conversations, I believe.
Yeah,
because
capitalism as well.
And capitalism. If both parents, which is another tack on like school, is just a way to park your children while people go to work. There's another. He doesn't really talk about that in the book, but
no, because he focuses on the kid stuff.
Yeah, and he focuses on the learning and the play, and there's a whole section on play that we didn't really talk about, but that does revolve around things that we've said in the past in other conversations. So not to be taken for granted, and I really like the idea of the model of the democratics. It's generally what it's called. It's democratic schools. There's a bunch around the world.
We know someone. We have a mutual friend who went to a democratic school.
Yeah, and my sister went to a sort of a democratic high school, but it's not exactly. It's close to the system, but not entirely. And then I found out that there were a few others in France, quite recent ones as well. But there's one. I found out there's one in Paris, but it started in 2016. Apparently, they only have 20 to 30 students, and it has to be private because of the French laws and it's not completely democratic like the Sudbury Valley School is, because they have to comply with some French laws. And the main one is there's one of the conditions is you have to agree to spend 20 hours in there a week minimum, because there's some kind of compulsory school conditions. So I want to learn more about what the letter of the law is in France of what compulsory school means.
Can you imagine our mutual friends, our 4 friends, starting school together? That would be hilarious.
Yeah,
It would be pretty cool
Four.
too.
I don't know which one we're talking about, but we'll talk about it later.
Oh well, the four of us. There'd be four
Oh,
of
the
us.
four. Oh,
Yeah,
I finished this book, and this is my main thing. Is I want to create a school.
it would be hilarious.
I want to create a Sudbury Valley school. That's what I want to do. No, I don't. I don't. This is just. That's what I felt like. But I felt really
Yeah,
inspired, and I
yeah.
felt like this would be like a worthy project.
It is. I think it would be. I repeatedly get pupils and some colleagues saying, "Why don't you start a school?" And then one of my colleagues who left and has gone to another school said, "Well, if you start a school, you become a head teacher. I'll come work for you." So it's, the problem is I always feel like I need something to rebel against, and if there's nothing
But
to
that would be
rebel against,
rebelling against the whole education
yeah,
system.
true, it would.
That's a
It
big
would.
one to be rebel against.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Now you've said that, that's
That'd be worthwhile, and it would
it
have
would.
to in France, and I think in the UK, but I don't know. In France, it almost certainly would have to be private, but that does not mean that it has to be expensive. Now, I don't know how that would work. I think some people would have to donate and have to raise money like a charity or like a nonprofit. But because I noted that I need to look at the other ones. There's a few others in France, but there's one in Paris, I said, and it's expensive. I imagine it's because it's in Paris and they have to pay for, just paying for the building costs a fortune. But I don't want to do it in Paris. I want to do it in the countryside somewhere.
Yeah, and drink wine. And drink wine.
Sure, why not? I mean, not on the. I don't know if not on the school premises or not, but then the other thing that came in recently is theme parks. So I also want to create a theme park. Unfortunately, so creating a school is new.
You want to create a theme park?
Yeah, I definitely want.
That would be worthy too. That would just create a sense of wonder, like Disney's whole thing about sense of wonder.
Yeah, it's also so the two things on that are sense of wonder and magic and having a magical experience. But also, it is also just
take your money.
The biggest mecca of temple to capitalism and money making there is.
Yeah.
And in the context of climate crisis and problems, theme parks are not the most, conservative from an energy perspective, and it's really not a cheap venture as well. But it could be awesome. Then there's something a little bit more humble that you're like, well, a Sudbury Valley School is kind of just a theme park for kids.
But it is.
It could be just a little bit more humble with a garden to play in, some books, and
and a box
of toys.
Just just a box. Did you not have fun as a kid with a box?
I did. I was in my airplane,
like Calvin and Hobbes. And
I had a lot of fun with a box. I sat in the box and it was my airplane.
Yeah. You don't need anything else. You need a box and a garden.
Yeah,
and maybe Lego. Lego's amazing. But
so you do need a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
However, so I've been wondering quite a bit frequently on changing what I'm doing, creating a company or going to a full-time job. Yeah, I mean, these are recurring questions. They come back regularly.
Okay.
And this is back to school time. Anytime that I'm last week I was with my aunts who are always having the same kind of conversation, like, what are you doing for your retirement? Are you saving enough money? Those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And anytime there's questions about what's going on, and I'm like finding myself a little bit less motivated for work, and there's the holidays, and kind of just raising questions of either, okay, should I just go back into the mold to be able to have a mortgage, and like have a full-time job, have a mortgage, be able to buy a house, save some money, those things. And or like, is this a necessity to go through that step? Because in French culture, it is a necessity. In the culture, like people, like my aunts will very much say that. My aunts also have really no idea how I live. They were employees their whole life.
Yeah.
Even though they give me a lot of advice, but it's advice that comes from another generation, another time.
Yeah.
That comes
the world
from,
was very different.
My friend reminded me, but like one way or another, we're never going to have the same kind of retirement fund, whatever we do.
Yep.
They're just retiring now, and they worked their whole life, and they never ever took the same kind of risks as my mom and my parents did, or me. As in risking to move, risking to change jobs, risking to lose all your money, and taking risks in a, let's say, a path to growth, because we'd like to bounce back to free to learn. is having the freedom to experiment. But that also means in this context, taking risks.
Yeah, it does.
Which is something that it seems like most of the culture is dead against, or not conducive to, in the very least. Taking risks, and even like in the context of like education for children, everything is signed and path. And then what's funny and ironic, not funny at all, but it's not funny at all because it's generations. Now there's complaints that the new generations are not autonomous in any way, like the 20-year-olds, but you've removed every single ounce of autonomy they had.
Yeah.
Oh, and another question I had was, well, what about social media and video games for the book? And he doesn't talk about social media as much.
It's quite an old book, isn't it?
Not that old, 2013.
Okay.
Oh, wait. But he does talk about video games. And what is correct, and I agree, is it's the last, copyright 2013.
Okay.
It's the last place where the kids have any freedom.
Yes.
So they use it.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing they're allowed is to be in front of a screen. So the virtual worlds and World of Warcraft, and
Minecraft,
programming,
all of that,
and Minecraft, and
creative,
all those things are where they can play.
Autonomy, play together.
They're not allowed to go down the street to go see their neighbor like I was while I was walking the dog. And again, we do circle back to a class thing. I was in a very nice neighborhood, although more popular neighborhoods in a council estate, it's entirely likely that kids would have the right to, or we used to, I think, have the right to gather, in the front yard or in the playground. Now I'm not so sure it's allowed. It depends on the families. I don't really know.
Yeah, I think it might.
Anyway, I rambled a little bit, but
because the other point that another one of our mutual friends was making about his two kids, he said, I mean, there's a community of home edders who unschool and whatever.
Sure.
So, and they meet together. But what they've said is, what he said to me is that his children have said, children who go to school are mean.
Yeah. Oh, he talks about it. He also talks about that. He talks about bullying. He talks about meanness. And there's a lot of behaviors that are drawn or extrapolated or not encouraged. Anyway, there's a lot of those kinds of behaviors that come out as a result of the environment of school.
Yeah.
And he goes into detail. That was just a little bit generic what I said, but yeah.
Yeah.
They say the kids from school are mean. I've heard that before.
Yeah, the one-upmanship,
the bullying, and the one-upmanship and social environment that is also conduced by grades and by parents and by. It's not good. Now, one of the biggest criticisms I could easily have is you're not a parent yet, so which is fair. But I do believe that this is the kind of environment I want to give to my kids.
Hang on.
So
let me just speak to that about not being a parent yet or whatever.
Sure.
I don't think that's necessarily relevant. Sometimes I get and I hate this. It doesn't happen very often.
I'm sure it's not relevant, but
no, it doesn't happen very often. But sometimes a teacher will say, if you're not, another teacher will say, if you're not a parent, then you're not as good a teacher. And I really take umbrage with that. And I
disagree with. That's for sure. Yeah.
And I get into that with them, but for me, the way I approach it, and I think you might find something similar with this, is I know that being an uncle, and Davina and I being uncle and auntie, is an incredibly important role.
Yeah,
and
I can be, really, and I take it as such anyway.
Yeah, I know we both do, because I'm presenting an alternative model for being a man to my nephews, and so is my wife being a woman for my nephews. They do not get exposed to the way people think. They're getting exposed to many, but I know that, and I also know that as a teacher, I'm attempting to do that for the boys. It's this year, my form class, my tutor group, they're all boys. There's no girls.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really getting into it with them about masculinity. But as I realized, having as many different versions of and expressions of what it means to be a woman, man, whatever, parent, supports parents as much as it supports the kids as well.
Yeah.
And so it's really irritating when people go, hey, you're not a parent.
What was funny in what you just said is the parent thinking that they're a teacher. A parent is not a teacher.
Yeah.
But society now and culture has made it so that to make you believe that you are your child's teacher to show them the way. Yeah. And he also does remind us in there that your child is not yours. they're not your project, even though of course we lay out a lot of dreams. Like I wasn't the top sports player, so I'd love my kid to be great, but actually what if your kid has their own wants and dreams, and what if you were just there so that they could grow into theirs?
That's such a great point.
And that is a really important one that I firmly believe in. And that's one thing that I was reminded reading this, what my parents did give me. And, they messed up a bunch of stuff, and they're not perfect. And I don't think there's any kind of manual. And sometimes my siblings criticize, anyway, it doesn't matter. What they did give me is an enormous amount of autonomy and responsibility very early on. And the want to, now you could criticize them for like not being behind me to do homework and stuff, but actually in the end of the day, was that the most important? And it's funny, having seen my aunts, I'm just saying this because I don't think anybody's watching. To my brothers, every time, I love them to bits and I love my family, but I also walk out and tell them, and I'm ready to tell my siblings, I'm reminded once more that, mom is like, I get triggered because she's my mother in many ways, but she's the best of the bunch. I wouldn't have wanted to any of her siblings to be my mother.
So I think you make a good general point. Parents are doing the best they can with what they have, and everyone does
and
that.
The best they can with what you have to give you autonomy so that you can be like a productive adult.
Yeah.
And on the funny side, my aunts have regularly said or praised my mom and said, well, I don't understand. How did you, like, what happened that your children are so successful? Like, it doesn't make sense given how you are. Basically. So when they say things like that, it's so weird because it's like both a praise and a massive criticism at the same time. So like, how did you, my mother, with who you are and how you behave, make so that these kids were like that? And happy, productive, autonomous, and all that stuff.
It's such a great point you make about children. Their own people, they're not the project. And I see that so much of the kids at school. They are their parents' projects. That is what is going on. And then they expect the teachers to sort it out. It's got worse over lockdown. It's almost like you're the teacher, you sort it out. But then also, the parents were at school, and everyone has an opinion about how teachers should be and what teachers should do and how it works, because everyone's been at school. Oh, please, please don't be talking to me. Some parents I get a bit frustrated with, but it is very, very interesting. And even when I do that in class, I'll be like, okay, go figure it out occasionally. I'll do that. They can't. They don't know what to do.
Yeah, but and so what it gives at the end is the kids that I teach who are 22, and they have no idea. They have no, like, for the vast majority, no interest in what's going on, what I have to say, and even though they're in a specialized field of study.
Mm-hmm. Wait a minute, they're in a specialized field of study that they're not interested in?
Yeah, or they don't show it.
Wow. Okay.
They just were cruising.
Oh my God. And they're paying for this, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. But they're really paying for the network and for the internships, and they will. I mean, my take on it is generally, and it's just poor. The level of interest, curiosity is really poor.
Do you think that's
the level
a
of
product of the school
thinking,
system?
the level of writing, the level of, I think it's a consequence of everything we talked about so far. That it's a production of like a whole school and life of theirs produced to and in France even more so than any Anglo-Saxon system, to be producing by rote and say, okay, what is the thing we need to do to have the grade that is needed to go to the next step? That's it.
Wow.
So everything else is superfluous, but that's how they've been trained their whole school years.
Oh my gosh. Oh,
what's the thing needed? And I'm like, well, I want you to think freely about this particular question. And they're like, okay, well, what is it I need to say to have the grade?
Yeah.
In short, they kind of say, and
that.
that's most of them are not even saying anything. They're just waiting for it to be over.
Wow. I'm reminded of the metaphor.
Now, of course, there's going to be like outliers, a minority of ones that are really interested in it, pretty good. What's sad is that I'm not really actually teaching anything.
Mm-hmm.
The ones who are really good don't need me.
Yep.
they're doing their thing, and I so they appreciate, and I appreciate, because we have an interesting conversation. I supply more stuff, they have questions, so it's I like to think that it's kind of enriching in one way. Then there's a vast majority that don't really care. They're just like, or seem like they don't, about what's going on in the class. They're just, going through this step to get to the next step. And then there's some that are just probably not there at all.
Mm. I'm reminded of when
So what is it I'm teaching? I'm not sure. I'm just
yeah,
holding
the
these kids so that they get their piece of paper at the end to say they've graduated. And really, or I'm a source of and then I'm an entertainer.
oh, because that's the other thing teachers
We
have
talked
to be.
about this a little
You
bit.
have
I
to
was
be
grading some.
engaging. Yeah, that means like be entertaining. Like,
Yeah,
just
be
come on,
entertaining, and
man.
that's the main source of checking for the school whether I'm a good teacher or not, is the students saying whether they were entertained or not. Ultimately, I
Yeah.
say entertained because that's what it was. I was reading copies from the last year students, and these are students in after 5 years after their A levels, after the baccalaureate.
Yeah, it's that 23, 24, right?
Yeah, 22, 23.
20, yeah.
um or maybe 24, generally 23, 22. And they, one part of the exercise was to synthesize and write a whole perspective of the year and the studies and the classes. And it read, like, most of them read like really bad. And granted, many of this is in English and it's not their first language, but still,
Hmm.
many of them are also either bilingual or very close, and they've been studying in English for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And writing in English. The level of English is poor, but anyway, that's by the by. But the main, they read like bad TripAdvisor or Yelp reviews, and even ones where I was complimented, so it was like, felt nice to my ego that they liked my class.
Yeah.
But most of it was like, oh, I like this class and I didn't like this class, and that's it. And
Wow.
that's as much like perspective, analysis, thinking, what you got out of it, what did you learn. I
I
liked this
liked
class, it
it.
was interesting, and I didn't like the class. I actually had to note and ask in the oral exams afterwards, like, you said you like this class, but not, that's it. How am I supposed to, and I'm supposed to grade all this stuff. And there's most of them, and it doesn't matter. They're going to get they're getting their degree. Like, even if I give them a bad grade.
There's a book what I'm reading called Bullshit Jobs. It really says,
Yeah, this is the training to get into bullshit jobs. How are you
wow.
doing with that book?
Yeah, I'm about 60% through. I started reading some other books, but I
I'm
like I
reading this.
said,
Did I talk about this? This is so good. 20th Century Boys.
I think no, yeah, yeah, you did, yeah, you did, yeah.
I'm almost finished with the second volume. I bought it. They're
The
pricey, but they're really
no,
good.
I don't want it to end. Bullshit Jobs. I keep wanting, so I read a bit and then I think about it and then I start noticing it everywhere, and then like, okay, I don't want it to. I want it to kind of
So
keep.
good.
Oh,
I don't. Well, I
amazing book.
want to read his other books, I believe, but I have so many other books I want to read. But I really did. So, Bullshit
Well, I
Jobs
got
was
them used to it.
altogether making me think, okay, how do I get out of this thing? Because and honestly, I shouldn't say this, but
You found a way.
no.
You
But
have. You
well,
created a school. There you go.
that's a possibility. This, I think, that's the kind of stuff.
Or
That
a
is
theme
the
park.
kind of things that I would be a lot more interested. That would be a really worthy project,
Hmm.
and hopefully a way to earn a living. But
Yeah.
that would be a worthy project. I don't know if I'd be
I,
ready to put my employment at risk every year, like the guy from the Sudbury School does, but maybe.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like you create the school and then the kids kick you out. What happens then?
Lord of the Flies.
I guess I create a new school. I don't know.
You could do. There's there's a point I wanted to make about what you're saying about the way young people approach problems that
Mhm.
I was hit with. Maybe it was about 4 years ago. We have this online tool for uploading homework or not, or setting homework, and you
Yeah.
can set it to upload homework.
Mhm.
Now I put on there, so these kids are now 14, and so they were 11 when they started. So I wrote the task and I said upload your work, and I got loads of messages like, how do I upload?
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah. I talked about that with teacher
what?
friends during the pandemic as well.
Seriously? And because if you scroll down,
They don't know how to
there's
do
an
it.
icon with a paperclip, and then you just click up, you scroll down, and it says upload. And I was thinking, when you and I grew up with that, with no internet, and when computers had 64K of memory, my phone has gigs worth of memory. And in that time, I had to find work. I can find 3 ways of trying to do the same thing on a computer because I have to, because you just
But
like trying
also
to make it work.
the phones and the apps and the operating systems are now designed and
Yes.
increasingly designed as dumbed
Yes.
down,
Yes.
but so more user friendly, more easy to use,
So you
but
don't think.
also changing them in such a way that the people are products.
Yes.
So that what is happening is you're scrolling, you're used as eyeballs for advertising. Like if TikTok is done in a very, very, very extremely efficient / addictive way for you to scroll, and what you're doing is not consuming video, you're being used as
Mm-hmm.
a person
Mm-hmm.
eyeballs to serve advertising to make a business model.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the evolution from Facebook to Instagram to TikTok, for example, is really an evolution on like, how do we get people to stay in this thing longer? It's not really about the content creation. The content creation is only the mean to the end of you sticking for 3 hours so that we can sell advertising to you. The social dilemma kind of shows this. It's a bit, shorthanded, but it does quite well a good job of showing you how it works.
I like The Great Hack, and I like
I haven't seen that. I should watch it.
I like the book Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, that brings together a lot
I've
of
not
that.
seen that. I don't know it.
Yeah, that book. And I think because he talks. I think, what's the phrase? It's the phrase of surveillance capitalism.
Yeah,
I think
we talked
that's the
about
phrase.
this before.
Yeah. So, but I like that book. It's very, very, very easy to read.
Actually, because for some reason, Google's serving me a lot of Disney news at the moment, and
Oh,
particularly
why
Disneyland
is
and
that?
Disney parks.
Can you explain why that might be, Willem?
Did I explain already on the show that I'm now the proud owner of a Disneyland Paris annual pass, infinity grade? And then
What? Oh, I didn't know that bit. Infinity grade.
There's different levels, and infinity is the top tier.
You're a top tier owner of an
Yeah,
Disney
I'm not sure what
pass.
that means because there's a lot of other people who have that, but
Oh, okay.
But it means I get more stuff.
So what you do is you go into Disneyland and work. Am I right?
So I just this 2 weeks ago and Friday I went into Disneyland to work.
You've done that more than once, though.
Twice. Well, I really tested it on Friday. The other time I forgot my battery and I didn't have a lot of battery on my phone, so I sent a few emails, but it wasn't really working. I just wanted.
Just
but
explain
that 2 weeks. So
this is a confluence of so many things.
There's a lot of things going on
all at once.
I'm just going to shorten it, but there's a lot of things that happened during the. I had not been. So I live in Paris and Disneyland. There's Disneyland in Paris, right? And I had not been. I have to look. I can't remember when it was that I went before this year. Many years ago, like 15, 16, 17. Maybe 18 years ago, I'm not sure. And I was organizing to go with my sister-in-law, niece and nephew, which we did. And then I was supposed to go to London with my other nieces the following week. It had to be canceled. And then I had to find something to do last minute. And I remembered an ad saying that, remember, you can deduce the price of your day ticket if you buy an annual pass. I started looking at the annual pass. I became completely ensconced. And it was decided that I'm going to do that. Long story short, I bought an annual pass, justified by many reasons. I thought I'd studied the thing, but of course I understood a lot more how complex it is because Disney doesn't give you anything. Disney does not give you anything. It's just like nothing comes for free over there. And now I have an annual pass, and I'm organizing to spend more time there with my nieces and nephews, and I have 20 special price tickets. And since I also rekindled with a passion for theme parks and roller coasters, which I've had in the past, I have a bunch of theme park and roller coaster books. And I was
whoa, hang on.
Oh, you didn't know that?
Books? What do you mean by books? Books about theme parks?
Yeah, I have a big book called the Global Theme Park Industry. That is a university book by an economist about how theme parks operate. I have one about the Disney Imagineers, which is the name of the engineers who create the Disney parks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The first one was interesting too. I never finished it because it's like a lot denser than I thought. But Sorry, wait a minute.
I didn't know this. This now making complete sense about why you'd buy a Disney annual pass. Oh my god.
So I have this one I found. All these are super old, but I have one called Mouse Tales that is all about the stories of the behind the scenes from stuff that happened at Disneyland. That is like from crunchy to a little bit sexy to a little bit dangerous to it's quite fun. This one is 31 Months in Japan. It was probably a self-published thing by this couple that moved from the States to Japan to build the Universal Studios park. And it's this story about moving abroad, living and working in Japan and building a theme park. This one is the global theme park industry.
Oh, that's the Economist one, right?
Yeah, I think he's, I can't remember. He's a, is he an economist? Anyways, operations, strategies, finance, marketing, impact. Wow. There's a lot of numbers. It's kind of old now, but it's, you know what? It's funny because now I think when I bought this, I had not started working in business and marketing, but now that I have for 15 years, I would be able to understand this a lot more. Because I didn't read the whole thing because I was like, I don't understand. But now I think I would be able to understand a lot more. We have this is like so interesting. I have to circle back to this. The Roller Coaster Lover's Companion and a guide to Disney Imagineering.
Wow. That looks cool.
It's cool. This one was, I even saw it at Disneyland. It's still one of those staple books about, you know, the drawings that led to the concepting and how the parks were realized.
I love that kind of stuff.
It's super cool. There's a couple more that I saw over there that I'd like to maybe buy. So all of this, I bought these things when I was in London. It must have been around 2005, 2006. And so what's interesting is I'm rekindling, and it's kind of an interest that I kind of vaguely forgot about. Partly because I didn't go to a lot of theme parks. I did go to a few, and I'm still known for that. And I had organized I had organized in 2006 my brother's stag do, and we went the 4 siblings together because it's really rare that we get to do something with the 4 siblings. Down to, you know, age differences, living in different countries, etc. And I organized for us to go all together to Alton Towers for 2 days. And that was an awesome trip. It was so cool. And there was also, I think that came afterwards. It was 2008, 2007, end of 2007 or 2008, can't remember. But I was working for the company when I started working in strategy. And we had a day out at Thorpe Park and like kind of privatized the park for 2 hours in the evening. And then we had the corporate event and party there.
Oh, wow.
So these are 2 theme parks in Britain for anybody, just in case. And yeah, and then I started procrastinating work the last 2 weeks. I started watching vloggers of like theme parks all around Europe and realizing, one, how expensive, I knew how expensive Disney is, and they hiked up and doubled their prices since the pandemic.
Okay.
Also realized after taking the annual pass how complex it is, because they said, "Oh, do you know about the reservation system?" Oh, yeah. Anyway, it's long. I'm not going to explain, but I had to buy this a little bit last minute, and there's a complex reservation booking system to be able to go to the parks. I don't just go with my card any day. It used to be that way. Now it's not. They control how many people go in, and I have to go through a booking system, and I'm allowed up to 3 bookings.
Okay.
So that means, for example, I have 1 day booked with 2 of my nieces over the school holidays to go for Halloween. That's one of my bookings.
Yeah.
Done. I have another one for the following week for my other niece. Done. So now I have 1 booking that I used my 1 booking to go on Friday. And now I'm looking to book to go with my godson. But now I have to look at when is it available. And it goes from green that you have free, you can book. Blue is you're on a waiting list, or red is you can't go for every day of the calendar. But it makes it that I can't go anytime I want. And what's going on is like I will have 3 days booked in advance to go with my nieces and my godson, and then I can't go anymore. or I give up one of the reservations, but risk that day being full, particularly that it's school holidays. I'm booking for like high. So you see, and then, to make things more interesting, there's another booking engine for my guests who have a half price ticket. So I have to make sure that the day I want to go, I have availability and they have availability, but it's on different calendars and a different website.
Oh my God. Because when you said infinity, I was under the impression you'd be like, yeah, you just go in there, sit down, work, and then like whatever.
If you've booked in advance.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
So, and of course, nobody's forced me to organize and book 3 days in advance with my nieces and nephews.
True.
But the reason why there's 3, and now I realize, like, in the future, I don't want to have more than 2 booked, so I have one where I can actually just go.
Yeah. Oh man.
And on Friday, so I was procrastinating a lot of work, and I had, so one of the other most difficult things to get is a booking in one of those table service restaurants that are ridiculously expensive, of course.
Okay.
The themed restaurants. There's a few that have table service.
You went to the Pirates of the Caribbean one, right?
Exactly. I went to the Pirates. Sure. So I had a booking because I was just browsing and looking at, like, am I going to go back? Is there a booking for a restaurant? Sometimes they pop up at the last minute. Usually they're all booked out like 2 months in advance, but regularly you get cancellations. And I was, because I was looking at everything going on from Disney, and I have discounts and I have a whole year of it. I'm like, oh, maybe I'll just, this is the kind of stuff that in the past I would have never considered to do, to go to the sit down restaurants, because there's so many other things to do and it's expensive. But now I'm like, well, I could just, like the week before I went and I just walked around.
Yeah.
I just took in the sites, looked at the details, looked at the theming. I did go on a couple of rides, but that's it. And I went on a ride that I would never done before. I went on the paddle boat around the lake, thing that would have never done before, because there's a lot more other things like roller coasters to get done. And this time I really wanted to test the idea. Is it possible that I get work done over there? And where could I work? And what does it look like? And I had a booking for 3:15 p.m. for the Pirates restaurant. And I thought, okay, I really need to get my work done. I really need to get my update sent to the clients. And I thought, it seems like it'll be a sunny-ish day. Let's just do it. Why not? And there's Wi-Fi over there. And actually, I discovered the Wi-Fi is really fast. It works really well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the park. And yeah, I was a random weirdo. And I sat, and it was just sunny enough. It was a bit cold because of the temperature dropped in Paris, but it was just sunny enough that I could be outside on my laptop. And I was enjoying, and I sat for 4 hours. Well, an hour and a half in one spot, and then I moved and I spent 3 hours in another spot. So I worked for about 4.5 hours out of 5, like from 10 to 3, and got the work done, sent out to the clients, and then I went for lunch, a late lunch. and I sat. It was really funny to sit there for 3 hours, and so occasionally just look up, and it's so busy. There's so many people there, but the people are all moving, and I'm the only one there, because, like, who does that? Nobody. Sat there with my laptop working. But it was fun. I was just like, everybody's having the day of their lives, or their unique day and their special day in Disneyland. And a friend of mine again reminded me that most of the people there, it's their once in a lifetime. They saved up money. They traveled far away to be there. A lot of people from Italy, from Spain, from probably other parts of France, from the States, from Asia. And of course, there's parks in multiple places, but still, it's a big deal to go, and it's so expensive. And I discovered there's a bunch of other theme parks I want to go to, and I discovered about some, just bad, like people. So Disney. I discovered that Disneyland Paris is considered to be one of the worst Disney parks in the world, and by that I mean is meant that the Disney. So there's 2 parks. There's Disneyland Traditional, and there's the Disney Park Studios. But that opened in 2002, and they're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Disneyland Paris. So it opened in 1992, and the studio one opened in 2002, and it was incomplete. There was like 2 rides, and 20 years later, there's not much more than that. There is a little bit more, but it's still half the size of the other one. But they charge the same price. And so
Yeah.
and meanwhile, all the other parks, the other theme parks that are not Disneyland, that don't benefit from the same Disney aura, um, and marketing, and just capital, like the world leader of entertainment and everything. And they have Marvel, and they have Pixar, and they have Star Wars, and it's a juggernaut. Charge half the price and have to innovate twice as much. New rides, new systems, new themes, new things that is super interesting for some of them. And I just found a guy on YouTube I quite like, who's goes to theme parks, and he's a roller coaster and theme park enthusiast. And he particularly likes going to smaller ones to see how they're building up, what's happening, how much it costs, and which is I found really interesting. And all this to say, there was a long ride to circle back to advertising, because the last weekend was the D23 Expo, and it was the big event that Disney announced a lot of news for all the divisions. It was like, it's the big Disney Expo, the big Disney convention.
Right, D23 being Disney 23,
Yeah.
kind of what's happening next year.
Exactly. And including all the parks and resorts. And the new CEO is not liked by many people. And apparently he's even outrageously more openly capitalistic than previous ones. Not that they weren't capitalistic at all.
Because when we went to LA, that's the thing that struck me, is like, not LA, sorry, Orlando, Florida. Mm-hmm. The whole thing is designed to take your money. Like, just shocking. Well, not shocking. But
and the first time I went, so when I went in August with my niece and nephew, and we arrived just a few minutes before the 30th anniversary parade. Yeah. And I was shocked at how, but it was funny to be both playing with, on one side, you're looking at it, and this is the biggest money grab operation, capitalistic, outrageous things, everything I hate about it. And it's a cult, and we're indoctrinating, and I've been indoctrinated as a kid, and we're indoctrinating more kids. And there was like Goofy from the top of a float, like getting people to sing, and everybody was following him with their hands raised. And it was like, we're following the cult, the guru.
Yeah, it's true.
On one hand. On another hand, amazing, uplifting music about following your dreams and dancing, and it's so cool, and it's magic, and it's magical, and it's dreamy, and it's everything that is the escape from reality that Walt Disney wanted to build in these parks, and the characters and all that. But I was shifting to looking at one to the other, and it's so expensive.
I have that kind of conflict, to segue back, with being a teacher. What am I doing? Like, I want to make a difference to kids and young people in the future. But being a teacher, my prison guard. Actually, I'm a prison guard. It's prison, play. Like,
it's all of those things. Yeah. On one hand, like most of my political opinions and economic opinions, like say it goes against it to even take this annual pass. On another one, I live in the world. I do benefit, and I earn my money from this system and from feeding into it. Anyway, all I wanted to say was that there are a few days, because I'm being served a lot of Disney news now, I saw that this week there was a leaked call, and that the CEO of Disney, now unsurprisingly for a Disney CEO or a big corporate CEO, is saying he wants to synergize. And I say synergize, and this is no logo vocabulary.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was the wording from the article, but basically saying that he wants to plug in everything they know from people in the Disney parks to Disney Plus. So if he's like, well, it's crazy that we have people that come for a whole day in the park.
Yeah.
They use the card.
Yeah.
We know their behavior. We know their buying habits. We know what they're doing at the hotel.
And they're not subscribed.
We need to know that information to better target advertising on Disney Plus at them. So we know this. We know all the same profile, which goes dead against even like the small veneer and pretense of anonymity online that we still have, that, or the right to privacy that technically we still have, even though the anonymized data from online is not very anonymous. And that would be just openly saying, okay, well, if we want your profile, so that if I use my card as an annual pass holder, imagine I'm a Disney, because I don't subscribe, but then Disney Plus would also be able to sell the profile information to other places, probably.
Yeah.
to say, you know, that they know I'm in an infinity annual pass. They know which day I've been. They know what I've bought. They know what I've consumed. They know what I've been to the restaurant. They know. Now, I also know, as working in this area, that nothing is so easy, and
Yeah.
crossing the streams of all the
Yeah.
different computer
Yeah.
systems,
It's really
even
hard.
without talking about what is legal or not, is actually a nightmare.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll get there at some point because we're going in that direction. But as long as there's humans managing the systems, there's a little bit of hope that nobody's actually looking, because there's just too much information. The
Yeah.
more we go towards AI, the more scary it gets. But
So funny. So brilliant. And I'm looking forward to going to LA in October.
it's so many people. It's crazy. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to seeing some photos. I'm a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit, not more than a little bit jealous. And also, now that I'm rekindling with this interest, and I, you know, a few years ago, I went to LA regularly for courses, and I thought about going to Disneyland several times, and I did not. Part of the reason I didn't organize it, I was on my own. I could have organized it with other people. It's not that I couldn't have. But for a while, and now I'm like, well, I bought it, so just I'm going. We have a friend, and it's not the only one. I have several friends who are like, I hope you didn't go by yourself. I'm like, yeah, I went, and if it worked from there, why not?
Yeah.
I did feel a bit self-conscious about going to some rides, but then if there's a single rider queue, then I don't feel self-conscious. And ultimately, I know I'm not the only one. I do subscribe to the Reddit about it. So there's big Disney fans. I read a thread from somebody asking questions. Who was like, I actually have to go to Paris for work, and I have a couple of days of free time, and I really want to go to Disneyland. So I'm just going to go to Disneyland and spend, the day there.
The wonders of the internet and capitalism. Wow.
Yeah. And there's a lot of play within this playground. It's a playground.
Yeah, it's a playground.
No, it's a money-making playground, but still, people are playing. And it's watching people watching at Disneyland is really interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Davina
and I like
families and little kids having total meltdowns.
Yeah, yeah.
or about having the time of their lives, but it's so overwhelming for children.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. They're super excited, but a lot of them are small. And the other thing that shocks me, the amount of parents that are carting around in carts and push carts, kids that should be walking, that are, in my opinion, way too old to be pushed around.
I've noticed that too. I think.
And then I thought about WALL-E, and thinking maybe this is the kind of stuff that is leading us to just being blobs, staying in chairs. Anyway.
Yeah, can't help but think that stuff. Wow. I think on that note.
When are you going to? Oh, you'll tell me after. On that note, let's be done with
this. Basically, read, free to learn.
Yeah, free to learn.
Change the school system, cause a revolution, and when our school goes online, pay for it and make us rich by coming and playing with boxes in.
I don't need to be
the
rich.
middle of the country.
Although, if you're rich, you can finance the school.
Well, that's what the other thing I was going to say is, like, do we know any billionaires who just fund our school?
I think that's how I would try to make it happen, and charge ideally, and charge a symbolic 100 or one pound or euro to
just
parents.
Find some what's the word, philanthropist who wants to give us loads of money to change the school system forever. Yeah. So any philanthropist watching, get in touch.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.